The only constant is change, as the saying goes, and a lot of companies have to transform the way they work. But how do you communicate that to your stakeholders, to your teams? How do you communicate the story of transformations? That's what we're going to be talking about on today's show. My name is Jim Kalbach. I'm the chief evangelist at Mural, and I'll be your host with our special guest, Jeff Gothelf. Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
Hi, Jim. It's nice to see you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, likewise. We've done a lot of work together here at Mural. You're no stranger to Mural.
Nope. Yeah, we've done a lot of stuff together over the years. You and I have even played music together a couple of times.
That's right.
That was fun.
Totally. And you're the author of 5 books, is that right?
Only 5, apparently.
Only 5. Yeah. I'm just kidding about that. Yeah, only 5. You know what?
Yeah.
I've written some books too, and people volunteer me to write another book. Do people volunteer you to write another book?
No.
Like, what are you doing next, Jeff?
Yeah, people do ask, and I don't look. Our latest book, Who Does What by How Much, is about OKRs, and it just came out a couple months ago, and so I'm nowhere near the oh my God, what will the next book be type of mindset. You know, a couple of years maybe, but at this point, that's the one I care about the most right now, and I'm super pleased with it.
All right. So in a brief word here, tell us, how did you get from being a designer to talking to CEOs about their transformation story? What's that journey like?
You know, it's an interesting one, right? So I was a designer, and then I was a design manager and a kind of a team leader and a product manager and a product team leader. And what I found myself struggling with over and over and over again was trying to build successful, collaborative, cross-functional teams that worked well in agile software development environments. How do you get design, product management, and engineering to work well together? And when I got an opportunity to try to fix that problem, the result of that was the material that's in Lean UX. And that really changed the conversation. So I went from being a designer and a design leader, product leader, to being an author and to some extent a thought leader in that conversation. Now, the interesting part about it is that conversation was really tactical. It was like, here's how teams should work together. And so over the last decade, maybe 13 years at this point, the conversation that we've had with these books, in fact, has become more and more and more strategic. And what was fascinating is that no matter how strategic we got, we kept hitting this same ceiling, and that ceiling was goals. Like everything we were trying to do, every kind of process change or transformation or way of working, whatever it was driven and then ultimately hindered by organizational goals. Mm-hmm. And so as OKRs kind of have become popular over the last decade or so, particularly with John Doerr's Measure What Matters, bringing it to the forefront of a conversation, to myself and to Josh Seiden, it's really felt like a nice Trojan horse in a way to really get to the top level and talk about goals in a customer-centric way that, if implemented correctly in the way that we talk about in the book, everything else that we've talked about for the last decade and a half becomes easier to implement. So nice. That's kind of how that story went.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm experiencing some of that same phenomena that you just mentioned. I'm reading Who Does What by How Much right now about OKRs. And the thing I appreciate about it is the hyper focus on customer centric, right? Because you've probably seen it so many times, goals, being completely absent of any kind of customer value that you're trying to create, right?
See it all the time. And in fact, this is the hard part of working with OKRs this way is in the book, we remove the output from the goal statement. So there's no feature or product or service or campaign or activity or anything in the objective nor in the key results. And that's really weird for people because folks, it is, because usually your bosses are coming to you and they're saying, build me this thing, right? And make it red and finish it by Friday. Right. And that's technically, usually that's what most teams do. Now, you might push back and make it blue or get it done by next Friday. But the reality is there's not a whole lot of flexibility between sort of what you've been prescribed to build and what you ultimately end up building. And so when you remove that from the goal conversation, things get really interesting in a very positive way.
Right. Yeah. Empowering, right? Giving people agency. And I think that's what I also liked about your method of visualizing your transformation story, which I'm just going to slide on over here. And we're going to talk a little bit about this. I caught your video using Mural on how to visualize any transformation story. And I think this is empowering too, if people know what their transformation story is, right?
100%. Like this, look, I'm every day I become more passionate, which is such an overused word, but really passionate about storytelling, like storytelling as sort of like the decisive tool in any person, any working person's arsenal, right? Anybody who's trying to convince other people of something, if they can tell a compelling story, they stand a better chance of convincing those folks. And transformation is a massive change. Regardless of the size of your organization, you're asking people to implement something new and likely at scale and very different from what they're doing today.
So what problem then does storytelling around your transformation, what problem does that solve then?
So many transformations really just take a turn for the bad. It's overwhelming. I guarantee you that if you're watching this, you've likely been through some kind of an agile transformation in the last 15 years, right? How did that go? Right? I know how it went because I'm usually called in to come help clean it after the fact, right? Or if OKRs, like the OKRs, how did that go? And the reason why is because I would say, I don't like to speak in absolutes, but I would say the overwhelming majority of the time, organizations and specifically leaders don't tell a compelling story about why we're doing this. They just say we're going agile. Right. And and it might be because they don't even know, right? Because hey, we saw them do it, the other guys do it, so we're going to do it. But there's rarely any kind of justification for the change, and these changes have often been significant.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're looking at your canvas here, which is available as a template, and we'll put that in the show notes as well too. But just kind of walk us through it. How does this work? How does your setup work?
Yeah. So the way that we talk about this here is,
and I can follow you, Jeff, by the way, right now.
Excellent. All right, let's do that. So look, we're going to focus on telling a compelling story and to visualize that narrative, right? So if you sat down and you were like, I'm going to write my story, that's one thing. But if you went through this process here, where you visualize the various components of that compelling transformation story, in this case, writing that narrative becomes a lot easier, or building the slide deck that you need, the presentation to pitch to somebody, or the corporate memo that you have to write, or whatever it is. So the point here is to truly visualize all the components in that narrative and then be able to compose it in a way that makes sense to folks. So what happens? So on the left side of this template, we're going to cover sort of the current state of things, right? That's what we're going to cover. So when you start your storytelling, you want to talk about, well, what's happening now, right? And if we move a little bit in here to just make it big, right, we're going to talk about, this is an OKR transformation story, a little self-serving, I know, but if you're implementing OKRs, or you're part of that, this is a nice way to build that narrative. And again, replace OKRs with literally any other idea or change you want to build into work, right? So what's our current state of things? Well, the current state, like, why do we need to change, right? Well, the current state is we're slow to respond to market changes. We don't know how effective our work is in the market. We ship it, but we have no idea if it's actually working. We don't communicate well across disciplines. And the way that the organization currently incentivizes the team actually prioritizes the wrong work, right? We've seen that again and again. Okay, good. Why is that an issue, right? So those are the things that are happening, right? What's happening today? These are sort of facts, right? Facts that we can say.
Observations without qualification. Right?
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly right. Exactly. So this is what's happening. Okay, why do we care? Or not yet. I mean, so the issues. What are the symptoms that's actually driving? Well, because we're slow to respond to market changes, our competition always gets to market ahead of us. We don't know how effective our work is. Because of that, by the time we launch anything new, our customers have moved on. We don't know that they don't like this anymore and they moved on to something else. And due to poor communications and frankly, poor incentives, it's costing us a lot of money in lost time or productivity to get our teams aligned, right? So we're starting to get to the why, right? We're almost there, right? We're identifying the current status, like what's happening, the issues that that's causing. And then the last part of this is, why do we care? Okay, all that stuff is happening. Cool. Like, so what? And I think that's a really fair question, right? I think your story is incomplete without the so what. Well, the so what is, number one, we're reducing the quality of our hiring brand. So the people that we're attracting, we're not attracting top talent. Okay, number one. The thing that we set out to do in the market isn't happening. Our value proposition isn't reaching the market because it's taking us so long to deliver on that. People are moving on and they're missing it. And then we're losing money ultimately. And there's probably more that you can put in here, right? But the idea is to start to identify the current state of things, right? So this is sort of what's happening in the world right now, the issues or the symptoms that it's causing, and then why do we actually care about it as an organization, right? So that's the current state, and that's on the left side of this template. Now, we're going to jump over to the right side of the template, okay? Because now we want to paint the happy face, right? The happy smiley face. When we succeed with our transformation, and we're going to leave the transformation generic for a second, right? When we succeed with our transformation, right? What does it look like? Well, we're going to have no more silos across disciplines to our communication across the company. So marketing can talk to engineering can talk to design, everybody can talk to everybody. We start to respond to market changes at market speed. We're increasingly more efficient at delivering our product to market, and we are increasingly more customer focused, which gives us a sense of whether or not we're actually delivering value. Cool, that's what it looks like. Why is that better for us as an organization? And generally speaking, like, this stuff here should be the opposite of this stuff here, right? So like this is bad, right? So if we solve that, what does that look like? Well, we're going to have a better sense of what our customers need at any given time. We're better meeting those needs. Morale in the organization goes up and retention goes up. People don't quit. They're feeling like they're, having an impact on the organization. And then how do we know? Here's the interesting part, right? So it gets, and this is, right, what do we want to see people? And in this case, the people that we're talking about for the most part are going to be internal staff when it comes to transformation stories, right? Maybe it's customers too, but definitely we're going to focus on customers first, right? What do we expect people to be doing differently when all of this stuff is in place? Right? So every project starts with a persona and a problem to solve. So we're getting very customer centric. Every initiative has a cross-functional team, product design and engineering working together. And we've begun to build in regular and frequent touch points with the customer, right? So what have we done? We've done two things at this point. We've painted the current state of things and then the future state of things. So we're beginning to paint that picture. Now, the hero's journey here needs a hero. Right. And that's where we start to brainstorm some ideas here in the middle. Now I'm a little self-serving in this because OKRs are my jam these days. But let's assume that the transformation story in this case is OKRs. And again, if you look at some of these smaller options that we've put in here, these are all other things that could potentially also help with this, right? Agile ways of working, mandatory customer exposure hours, cross-functional squads, et cetera. These are all things. But the fundamental difference here is that the left side and the right side are states. They are almost, they're behaviors that are happening. The thing in the middle here, and the things that you might brainstorm other ways, right? There might be sort of other things we could do, right, to get from current state to future state. But the things here are not, they're not behavior changes. These are, this is the output in many ways, right? This is the process change, the transformation change, the thing that we want to build in that we think will get us from here to there. And so what we're doing here is we have started to literally paint the picture that says, look, all this stuff is happening here. right? And we believe, right? We believe that if we implement objectives and key results, what that's going to lead to is this amazing promised land over here, right? And there's at least two massive benefits to doing it this way. The first massive benefit is, I'm just going to move this stuff out of the way here because these are not our ideas right now. The first massive benefit here is that you are starting with why. So Simon Sinek made that phrase very famous, but we are starting with the organization, with our narrative, with why. Why are we doing this? That's number one, rather than implement OKRs. Oh, okay. Right. Why? Right. Why are we doing this? Because this is what's happening now. Right. And if we do it right, this is what will happen in the future. That's the first huge benefit here. The second huge benefit here is that as someone who's composing this narrative, what you're actually doing is you're putting yourself on a quantifiable hook. So I want to be super clear about that, about this part down here, right? What we've done here, and I'm going to just change the color here to red, I think, right? What we've done right here in this part is, that was a crappy circle. What we've done here is we, as the transformation lead, the organizational lead, we have put ourselves on the hook, right? That says, if we go from current state to future state, this is what we expect people to be doing differently. This is how we know it worked, right? And if this isn't happening, the what will change part isn't happening, we have to go back to our implementation of, in this case, OKRs, and decide if we need to pivot, to edit it, to try something else, or if OKRs aren't going to work for us and we need to do something else. And so now you've got all the components here, and you can transform this into a slide deck, into a narrative, into a memo, whatever it is that you need to do.
Yeah, you know, what I love about this is you can see cause and effect in the same overview. If you had written this out linearly in a document, you know, page 1 would have the current state and the behaviors would be on page 3, right? But here, now you can see how you drew the arrows, right? I think that's an important part of visualizing it.
Look, I think, the way that I just kind of went through this, and granted, we had this kind of pre-baked before we came in, but if you're comfortable enough with a tool like this, you could literally tell that story in real time, the way that I just told it. Right? Let's walk through these 3 things. You might even solicit some brainstorms from your audience.
Well, I was going to ask, would you do this as a team exercise to say, what's the current state? Or, you know what I mean? Or is this more of a telling mechanism like you described?
I think, look, I think you need to come in with an opinion on how to fill out these boxes, because what you're trying to do is really convince people to come along. That they might say, look, you know what, Jeff, you really missed this other stuff that's happening in the current state. Cool. What are the issues that generates, and why should we care about that? And then let folks contribute to that. And you know, what's nice about that is that when folks contribute to the story, now it's their story too. Right. So they've helped write it. So that's a really nice part of doing it like this with a tool like this.
Right. And you get the agency and you get the buy-in. If it's an open format like this, you can see cause and effect, and it tells a compelling story too, I believe. Jeff Gothelf, thanks so much for that. That was absolutely fascinating. We have a Mural template with this exact template. So if you want to tell the transformation story visually, you can get started. And Jeff, again, thanks for being here. And thanks everyone for paying attention.